You'd never know to look at it today, but the footpath behind me that runs through a pretty big housing estate in the townhead area marks the course of what used to be one of Glasgow's major roads. One end of that road used to be here. And the other end was more or less right here, under all this flyover malarkey. Today there's nothing left of it. Nothing left of the road itself or the tenements that lined it. Tenements containing shops and pubs, nor the churches or the other businesses that once lined the road. Absolutely everything was swept away. Although a pretty major thoroughfare in the city of Glasgow, Parliamentary Road actually had quite a short life. It isn't shown in Peter Fleming's map of 1807, just a few years before the Glasgow Lunatic Asylum, later to become the Royal Glasgow Lunatic Asylum, was built. By the first Ordnance Survey Plan of 1857, Parliamentary Road, running as straight as a Roman road, is well established, although the section between Doby's Loan and Glebe Street would not be developed until the 1860s. In that 1807 map you can see a building. This was a toll house, sitting where Parliamentary Road would eventually be, where the St Enoch Burn crosses Doby's Loan. Although that building is not actually marked as a toll house in Fleming's map, we can be pretty certain that that's what it was by using the National Library of Scotland's side-by-side maps, which allow us to pinpoint the exact position of various buildings or features. We know, for example, that the old toll house survived for a long time and was incorporated into the newly created Parliamentary Road. And we also know that it became number 255 at Parliamentary Road. If we then place Fleming's 1807 map on the left of our side-by-side view, and an Ordnance Survey map of around the middle of the 20th century on our right, you can see that that rectangular building lines up pretty well with number 255 Parliamentary Road, and is indeed the old toll house. In 1967, John R. Hume took some photos of it, and here it is, just a few decades before it was razed to the ground, along with everything else in Parliamentary Road. In many videos, I've talked a lot about the destruction of much of old Glasgow and the quite unnecessary loss of many architecturally stunning buildings. But in many parts of Glasgow, it wasn't just buildings that were swept away. Whole districts like the Gorbals were razed to the ground and replaced with modern high-rises that effectively wiped out whole communities. The march of progress hasn't always been kind to Glasgow. The loss of Parliamentary Road is just another example of Glasgow's attitude to the past, in that it's best just to tear it down and forget it was ever there. We can use this same side-by-side map view to pinpoint exactly where certain buildings in Parliamentary Road were located. And we do so simply by using Google Street View in conjunction with those side-by-side map images. Quite a few photos were taken in the 1930s and 1960s, so let's look at some of them, and I'll show you exactly where the scene that was captured used to be. So, let's kick things off with the exact location of that old toll house at 255 Parliamentary Road. It used to be right there, although you'd never know it today. And I suppose that St Enoch's burn must be there somewhere as well, way under the ground. Probably the biggest and most impressive building on Parliamentary Road was the Glasgow Royal Lunatic Asylum. It existed before Parliamentary Road was created, being built between 1810 and 1814. Here it is in 1827, before Parliamentary Road was properly put in place. And here it is in 1880, by which time the asylum had relocated to Gartnavel, and this building became the city's poorhouse. We have a different angle of the building and gatehouse in this photo of around 1900, just a decade before it was demolished. Zooming in on a map of 1857, we can see various sections of the poorhouse. Most of the named sections in the main cruciform building were for females, along with surgeons' rooms, chaplains' room, and so on. But where exactly did the asylum and poorhouse actually sit in the Glasgow of today? Well, once again we'll use side-by-side maps. On the left is the same 1857 map, and on the right is one dating to just after the middle of the 20th century. We can see that the gatehouse of the poorhouse became number 322 Parliamentary Road, and that by this later map the main poorhouse building has gone. If we then swap maps around and include Google satellite view, we can see that the gatehouse used to be more or less right there, and the avenue leading to the asylum sort of ran up that way. That's the course of Parliamentary Road there, just at right angles to it. So, That's the procedure for pinpointing where bits of Parliamentary Road actually were in the modern Glasgow of today. There was also a bus station on Parliamentary Road, and although part of the old road sits under a corner of Buchanan bus station, it's not the same bus station and not in the same place. It was called Dundas Street Bus Station. Here it is around the 1960s, not far from today's bus station, but now buried below the Buchanan Galleries and Concert Hall. The PH shown right beside the bus station was a pub at 82 Dundas Street. Very handy for a small refreshment before or after getting a bus. Does anyone remember it? I'm sure it went under a variety of names over the years, but at one time it was Bar 82, owned by a Matthew Reid. The bus station sneaks into shot in this photo of 1967 and in this one of 1963. We can also see the Nip Bar in the background at 414 to 418 Parliamentary Road, and a closer peek in that same year. Again, we can see the PH, or public house, at that address in our 1960s map. Just another handy pub when you're getting on or off a bus. And here we see a lot of stressed commuters getting off a bus right at the Dundas Street bus station in 1963. Must get to my work, must get to my work. Some things never change. There were other pubs, like P. Meakin's at 194 Parliamentary Road, captured here sometime around the first quarter of the 20th century. Its ghost now buried under the grass of Townhead's housing scheme, right by the tree monument to Charles Rennie Mackintosh, who was born not far away. There were other pubs, like the Lemon Tree at numbers 394 to 400, and the Forfarshire Bar at number 420, both shown here in 1963. The latter not far from the Dundas Street bus station and a second bus station in the area in Kellermont Street, both seen in this 1960s map with a fair sprinkling of PHs to slake a thirsty traveller's drouth. And, of course, there were shops in Parliamentary Road. Every tenement had shops at ground level. Here we see the Cowlairs Co-op at numbers 194 to 210 in 1962. The location of that block of tenements was, again, where the tree monument to Charles Rennie Mackintosh stands today. Or maybe it doesn't. I'm not convinced that monument still stands. And here we have Henry Healy's shop at number 237. In Henry Healy's shops they patted butter quite a lot. The shop's location is buried under housing scheme grass, and the gentle sounds of butter being patted can no longer be heard in the area. At number 61 there was another shop, Lindsay's Grocers, seen here around 1935. And here's a close-up of the staff. A largely serious-looking bunch of youngsters who were no doubt wondering why they had to pose for photos when there was butter that needed patting. There were other buildings in Parliamentary Road that weren't shops or pubs. The City Manure Depot sat at 234 Parliamentary Road, opposite the Grafton Picture House, which itself sat just along from the old toll house. It was here that all the collected manure from all the horses in the city was stored prior to being patted and shaped and formed and baked into pies and bridies for the works canteen. I jest. One presumes that it was sold to farmers as fertiliser and spread around fields. Railway offices were at numbers 310 to 316, which was just beside the gatehouse and driveway leading to the old asylum and poorhouse, the site now under houses on St Mungo's Avenue. You can see them on the right of this photo taken by John R. Hume in 1968. The gateway on the left is the entrance to the asylum and poorhouse, and the curving building, number 318, is a remaining part of the poorhouse, clearly not destroyed when the main complex was demolished around 1910. We can actually see some detail in that curving building in our 1857 map, like a waiting hall, a boardroom and such like. I am inclined to think that the railway offices building was also part of the original asylum or poorhouse. The architectural style is similar to the curving building, with arched windows, and there is a definite shape outline, a footprint similarity when comparing the 1857 map with the 1960s map. If I fade from one to the other, you'll see what I mean. But whatever, all the buildings have now gone. End of story. But the big question is, why on earth did such a main road crammed with all manner of stuff disappear? I suppose it's all down to that ugly word, regeneration. The construction of housing in the 1960s, construction of the M8 motorway and Townhead interchange in the 60s and 70s, a new bus station in the 1970s, and the Buchanan Galleries and Concert Hall in the 1990s gradually saw Parliamentary Road wiped off the face of the earth. Was it worth it? Did having an indoor toilet mean we had to destroy everything in sight? Really? Of course, you do have to wonder what on earth possessed us to turn this into that. I'm Eddie Burns. Take care.